The first YCS of the 2023-2024 season has just wrapped up, and it was actually a team YCS taking place in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And in this YCS, we finally have a 3-team winner of Kamal, Pak, and Ruben, shout out to them, winning the entire event and also getting a new prize card in the process called Another Verse Glatonia, which is a continuation to the Another Verse archetype that was introduced last season with Another Verse Dragon. But there's one thing a lot of people are talking about right now, which is the Yu-Gi-Oh! Prizing for events like YCS's, which is coming in to a question following this tweet from Gabriel Netz. So this tweet is what sparked the entire conversation, and this tweet shows Gabriel Netz, which here is showing his top 8 prizing, a bag of Duelist Nexus packs worth around $50. Considering that Netz's team won top 8 at a big YCS, a big team YCS, beating over 200 players in the event, getting this much prize support, which is worth around $50, maybe with the playmat you can consider it maybe around $200, is kind of absurd, and this is what I want to talk about today. Just a few days ago, Chris Brown, who is the director of global esports and events in Pokemon, working on the Pokemon TCG, Pokemon Go, and VG, which I'm not really sure what that is, saying that the world's prize pool across TCG, VG, and Go and Unite is now around $2 million US. International championships across TCG and the rest is now around $500K, and regional championships, where all of these events take place, is around $100,000. And in this table which he posted, you can see the 2024 Pokemon TCG Regional Championship prizes, and that's only regional championships. And if you look at the Masters Division, which is sort of equivalent to my understanding with a YCS in Yu-Gi-Oh!, first place cash prizing is $10,000 for the winner, with 108 booster packs included into that. And then you have second place all the way to top 64, which has minimum prizes of $1,000 cash prizes and booster packs as well. And if we take a look at this table now from MTG, the Magic the Gathering Pro Tour, which again is, in my understanding, an equivalent to a YCS or a big regional, talking about around 200 players, but I think those are invitational events or more exclusive events. But anyway, the Brazilian YCS has 200 players, smaller YCSs has that amount of participants, also big regionals, and you can see first place, Reed Duke, in the latest format of the MTG Pro Tour, $50,000 in cash prizing, and you can see all the way through the top 8, the minimum prize was actually cash prize of $10,000. Now let's look at this post from the winner of the entire event. Pak took this whole event with his team consisting of Kamal and Ruben as well, winning the YCS, getting this brand new Another Verse Glatonia prize card, which is an ultra rare, which only the winners get in these types of events. Now he's also mentioning here, I'm fielding for offers for this prize card. PM me if you're interested. Not necessarily selling this, but looking to hear offers, because this could reimburse you for the money you paid for the trip. And considering that, and speaking about that, let's maybe try to analyze how much Pak actually spent to get to this YCS, and maybe look at the gain versus loss in terms of how much money he spent versus how much money he got in return. Now let's consider Pak actually flew from Toronto, which is, I believe, where he's based from. So taking a flight from Toronto to Sao Paulo with a layover is around $1,000 based on what I saw for this season. Taking into account another 4 to 5 days of accommodations, which means around $100 to $150 a day for an Airbnb based on the average price of central Sao Paulo Airbnb prices. Add to that a few $100s for participation equipment, cards, food daily, you get around $2,000 overall for the trip. And as a disclaimer, Pak actually has sponsorship deals or endorsements that probably cover some or all of these expenses. But again, let's look at it directly from a winner's perspective of a YCS, speaking of gain versus loss in this discussion. Now, the prizing for Pak's team was an ultra rare prize card, which has no sales at the moment, but if we look at the last season's prize card, which was Another Verse Dragon, it's kind of hard to find sales for the ultra rare, but let's take the super rare version, which is given to the top 8 contestants. These versions sell for around $1,000 to $1,500 a piece for the super rare prize card. Let's say we triple that amount, we get around $5,000 for the first place prize card. Add to that another $200 for a Nintendo Switch, which they also get, around $100, $150 for a playmat, and they also get a trophy, which doesn't usually sell. That will run you a lot more money, but looking at an overall $5,500 worth of prizing. Now, after deducting the expenses for this trip, you get around $4,000 in profit. Maybe $5,000 if you consider that the winners also get flights and accommodations for the next YCS or any other YCS they would like to attend afterwards. And once you start talking about the other top cut contenders, which is second place all the way to 8th place, maybe some YCSs have top 16 or top 32, things become a lot worse because the super rare prize cards sell for around $1,000, which would make a trip like that kind of break even, if not even a loss. So there's a few things to break down here. Understandably, Konami doesn't offer cash prizing for tournaments, which makes sense because this is their policy. But looking at other TCGs that are equivalent to the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG, you see that Pokemon and MTG offer cash prizing for winners, which incentivizes people to attend these events and also become more competitive and having a more competitive environment around the game. Now, hobbies like the Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG are not necessarily about profiting. This is a hobby that you invest in. Sometimes, rarely, it would pay off if you can win such an event like Pac and his team did. But there's also not a single player living today that is currently making money and making a career out of professional Yu-Gi-Oh! TCG. There's just no such thing. The prize pool is only equipment and cards that you can sell off later in order to maybe reimburse some of your investment in the trip. But you can't live off this thing. Even if you are the topmost players, the best competitive players in the scene that are consistently topping, and we have a lot of players like that in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Scene, you just can't make a living off of that. Another point that I want to talk about is it okay for Yu-Gi-Oh! Champions and winners to have to sell their actual prizing in order to maybe cover some of the expenses for all the trips they take attending every single event? What happens when you don't have cash prizing is that the unique and awesome prizes that Konami offers to those players, like the exclusive playmats, the messenger bags, the Nintendo Switch, and of course the exclusive prize cards, those can't stay with those players because they have to sell them in order to attend more tournaments. Is this what Konami really wants their prizing to look like? As a part of a long conversation that started at the beginning of this year, Konami's view of the game and the prizing, the sets, and the ban list have been questionable and all seemingly have a negative effect on the growth of the TCG specifically. And we already know this based on previous statements from Konami shareholders that they are not happy and the game is not growing at the pace which they would want it to be. If a game doesn't grow, it will eventually die. Even with the record-breaking attendance post-COVID, it still remains in the air that the game is not growing, investors are not happy, and now with prizing being on the table, maybe some players or notable figures in the community will raise their voice and say, hey, we want cash prizing, we can't come and compete at these high-level events without having some sort of compensation. And, right now Konami is basically forcing those players to sell off their awards and to make up for those trips. In my personal opinion, I don't really see a reason why events at this level don't have cash prizing. I know that there are some rumors where Kazuki Takahashi actually made some sort of a pact or agreement with Konami and the distributors in order to never have cash prizing in tournament, keeping it a wholesome, fun kids game at its core. But again, with all due respect to Takahashi, there are more things at play here. There are investors to the game and to Konami who want to see more growth at events. And eventually, if tournaments die down because professional players will just have it, then maybe the game slowly dies together with that. Does Konami need to bring in cash prizing to tournaments? Write it all in the comments below. Leave a thumbs up on the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel, and yeah, I'll see you later.